Ark Survival Evolved. No game makes me want to commit self-harm like Ark does. It's a fucking broken, glitchy, rage-inducing piece of shit game. But it's my favourite fucking broken and glitchy, rage-inducing piece of shit game. And also many others' favourite fucking broken and glitchy, rage-inducing piece of shit game. And it holds a special place in my digestive system. But now with it getting replaced by a remake and a sequel, it will soon be time to say goodbye to one of my favourite games. With all that being said, sit back, relax, get comfortable, get a drink, some food, and listen up to the story of Normal Team. In the beginning, it was 2018 in Australia. There was once a young man who was at one of his local EB games, where he decided he would buy the cool dinosaur game he'd been watching on YouTube, unaware of what this action would cause in his future. The foolish child would then go home and install the game, then 1 hour after launch get bored and never play it again for a few months. When he returned, he found a new liking towards the game. However, due to not being able to make a substantial foothold while on official vanilla, he would turn towards single player with cheats, which was able to contain him for some months. Meanwhile, on Earth, somewhere in North America, another person had bought the game, so when the young man returned to official, he came across another child on the beaches of South Zone 2. This child was New Kid 14. They would quickly form a bond, and not even 5 minutes later they would find another lone wanderer, whom they invited into their tribe. Silver Arc 980302. The trio would play official together on the Island 93 and form their first tribe there, followers of the Scarlet. They were dominating the server, as what they would have done if they hadn't been getting raided nearly every single day. The young man, who I will start referring to as me from now on because I'm getting sick of it, had to build it right back up again, basically by himself, with Nuke basically placing one wall and claiming he had worked extremely hard, and Silver disappearing most of the time, but when he was there, he got stuff done. They would tame trikes, parasaurs, dillos, and if they were lucky, raptors. One day, while rebuilding the base in South Zone 2, a Spinosaurus was giving our heroes trouble, along with the other tribes in the area. One of these tribes we would form an alliance with to take down the reptilian terror, the Tribe of Zero, or some shit like that. The two tribes worked together to hunt down the Spino, and drove it out of South Zone 2. Later, while patrolling the South Zones in another allies raft, I would be kidnapped by an Argent Tevvez and lowered into a steel box. Here I would meet 3 highly dangerous men, possessing a tech rex that was leveled somewhere in the 4 to 500s. However, they didn't wish to harm me, instead they forced me to devour the now infamous man sausage.
Super yummy, 100% made for real men. Every woman's dream.
They later let me out and started destroying every base on the beach, then started heading to Oz. I chased them but couldn't catch up. When I had arrived, the base no longer had a front section, and once again, it would have to be rebuilt. However, one of the 3 men came back and offered an apology, along with a Mastercraft pistol and whip, which was cherished, until we were raided again the following day. Towards the end of our journey on 93, we made a very powerful ally, Pickle Makers.
You like the lighter?
Pickle?
We were getting attacked by a tribe called Disciples, who were clearly more Satanist than Disciple because they were out for blood. While trying to negotiate our surrender and chat with them, we were invited to a party. In this party, there was roughly 3 others, and they were asking where our base was located. I hesitated to tell them at first, but due to the Disciples about to destroy our base, I had no choice. The Pickle Makers showed up and threw out the first Giga I've ever seen in person. I was terrified. I ordered Nuke to get the truck and run, just in case they would turn to us after destroying the Disciples. They gave chase to the Disciples' raft and sunk it. After the Disciples were gone, we chilled with them for a bit, and that's when the alliance was sealed. They would come by our base every once in a while to grab food, drink, or other supplies. If there were any threats, they would annihilate them. But they couldn't guard our base 24/7, so it eventually fell. And sadly, around this time, a larger tribe came to 93 and wiped out the Pickle Makers too. The world's pickle supply was dwindling, and so was the trio's sanity. We would try to transfer away to Ragnarok, but would lose the servers we transferred to. This is when we finally decided to leave official and return to single player. Roughly a year of single player, I decided to try out some official PvE. After deciding that it was pretty good, I joined the party with Nuke, but in this party, there was somebody else. Daniel J77. They had informed me that they had been playing on official Cross Arc 2 on Extinction, which I didn't have. So I decided to join up on Ragnarok Cross Arc 2, where I built a small stone base in the southwest mountains. The next day, Dan and Nuke's Extinction base would get raided, so they would come and join me at my Ragnarok base, officially marking the beginning of Noble Team. They had managed to salvage some of their loot from their Extinction base, and an ally they made, who went by the name Bone, helped us build up, even giving us a Giga at one point, which Nuke nearly lost by making it fight an Alpha Rex. We were gifted equipment from several tribes, including boss fairies and other creatures. We tamed in mass anything we thought we would slightly need: Dodix, Enkies, Pteranodons, Velonas, Dodos even. We were rising quickly, and it seemed like it wouldn't stop. We had no enemies, and were building allies. WIT and Bones tribe were some to name a few. It seemed like we had hit the jackpot, and we were going to make it big on the cluster. One day, Nuke decided to take one of the RGs and go on a journey. However, this nearly led to his and the RG's demise. It took us about half an hour to realize he was no longer responding. We started panicking about losing the RG, so we scrambled to find him. While searching, we came across one of the members of WIT, who we informed of the situation, and they decided to help us. We now had a search party on the server looking for him. Finally, roughly an hour later, we found him frozen in the sky above the snowy mountains. Near the center of the map. We picked him off the RG and whistled it back to base. We eventually learned how to steal wyvern eggs, so we tamed up some spare Pteranodons and stocked up on wyvern eggs. We now were starting to build air superiority, if only we could actually raise them, because we had no method of getting wyvern milk. Despite this, I started to notice my personal pteranodons disappearing. After a little investigation, I noticed we also had more baby wyverns than we once did. My personal pteranodons were being used for stealing wyvern eggs, even though we had no means of raising them. So I started to hide my personal pteranodons from the tribe. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. One morning, while I was getting ready for school, I decided to log on just to check on the base. However, my parasol had breaking news that it was detecting an enemy. I had to leave for school in 10 minutes, but when I was about to log off, I saw it. A giant wing. So I stayed a little to see what was going on. Then, I heard a large explosion. And all the turrets going off. As I buttoned up my shirt, I watched in horror. However, due to needing to leave for school, I was busy putting my pants on instead of trying to save anything. I finally got on the quetzal, but it was too late. Kenny's spear had caught up and devoured it, and thus the mountain base was no more. I will now play the full clip of our base getting raided. If you don't wish to watch it, then just skip to the time on screen, and if you don't want to do that, then go fuck yourself. This caused the tribe to be split, and me to be on my own for a bit. Dan and Nuke both got the opportunity to join Bones' tribe. However, due to the person that was recruiting living in America, and me in Australia, we could never find the right moment for me to join in, due to time zones. So an alliance would have to do. They ended up deciding to move to the ice cave on the island, so I moved as well. During this time, something happened causing Dan and Nuke to leave Bones' tribe, and join me again. But we were still allied. Me and Dan found a metal base on the beach, so we mustered together what resources we could to make grenades, and pulled off our first raid. We decided to keep all the creatures alive at first, but since all of the boxes didn't have much loot in them, we came to the logical conclusion that they were hiding loot in one of the creatures, their Sarko. So we slayed the beast. And lo and behold, we were right. We were now stacked up on loot again, for a few hours, because we would get raided that following night. We turned it back to official PvP one more time. Got raided overnight. Turned to small tribes. Raided overnight. Times were looking tough for the team, but then we found the button. Unofficial PC sessions. Dan found a good one by the name of Therapeutic Arc, which had high rates, raid weekends, high population, and much more. The others joined up earlier than me, so when I got on, I went back to the southwest mountain spot and built there again. I started taming the Rex while they were hopping on. I told them where I had built, and they showed up on actually raised wyverns. It was clear that with these rates, our mountain spot wouldn't be big enough. So we moved more west to an island in the ocean, and here we would have some of the most fun we would ever have playing a game. We quickly made friends with the two largest tribes in Ragnarok, House Stark and House Lannister. Their leaders, who went by Nate and Weagles at the time, were absolute legends. They helped us with anything we needed, and we would try to help them with anything they needed. One notable project was the legendary Pure Cyan Fairy, where our tribe had managed to get 2 Cyan mutations on a fairy, and Weagles had noticed. He asked if he could get one because he was making a Cyan Super Soldier Fairy, so we chucked one his way. Eventually we would notice that their names were not just quirky references, but there really was a Game of Thrones on this server. A tribe from another map had threatened the house tribes, and since all of Ragnarok was on good terms with them, everyone on the map united to defend them. This mystery tribe threatening Ragnarok was daring to bring a desert titan and go to war. This is when we decided to make our own, not so super weapons to win the impending war. The first major weapon would be a Panzerkampfwagen IV Tiger, a Bronto with a platform saddle, its gimmick being armoured up with turrets. I was incredibly proud of my first Frankensteinish creation, but to fight the Desert Titan, which is a flying opponent, they wouldn't do much good. So we started developing the second atomic bomb, which wasn't much of a bomb or atomic, but actually a Quetzal turned AC-130 gunship. This armoured Quetzal contained auto turrets, a mounted machine gun turret and a mounted rocket turret, and this would be leading our charge with our third weapon behind us. This weapon was the main part and one we all worked on together. When fetching wyvern eggs, I didn't throw away low level eggs. This would prove to be a benefit for the situation. We hatched and raised every single egg. This caused us to have roughly 50 wyverns following our AC-130 into battle. So when the threat finally looked like it was about to transfer in, we gathered our wyverns, hopped in the AC-130 and stationed ourselves at the Green Obelisk, and there we waited. However, the Desert Titan apparently ended up going to the island and dying to a turret tower, so we withdrew back to base and now had a fuck ton of spare wyverns. Ragnarok would remain united until the end of days. Weagles and Nate remained being legends, however I personally didn't remain. XXXTentacion and his cronies raided our base. At the time we were playing Halo 5 when we got a message from Weagles informing us of the attack. We hopped on, but most of the base was already gone. However, all of the ocean creatures survived, and the house tribes managed to successfully kill the raiders on their way out, getting back all our loot and giving it back to us. In the chat, the attacking tribes would be told not to come back by our heroes Weagles and Nate and their tribe members. However, Pizza Hut would prove to be a villain later down the line. Nature would quickly take back the base, showing the persistence of nature. I would decide to solo base and tame a beautiful spawner. However, I would get bored and stop playing, while Nuke, Dan and Silva kept playing. We asked for advice from Weagles and Nate, and the one thing they told us, in short, build more turrets.
Guess who's waking up over here?
Time to raid the base.
Will you get it over with?
Maybe Bob's.
Kill people without looking them in the face. But I ain't a fink. Dig? You've made your last
Creature trade.
kid. Sorry you got twisted up in this scene. From where you're kneeling must seem like a
Ascendant.
run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
The server eventually had its half-yearly wipe, and everyone would return for their shot at the throne of Therapeutic Arc. Noble Team decided to take a desert mountain we called Reach, another Halo reference, but such a name would be foreshadowing for its future. With all the skill we had acquired in the past, along with the increased rates, the four of us would quickly rise up to be one of the largest tribes on Ragnarok, along with our new ally, Melangang. Around the start of this wipe, a new creature was added to Ark, the Tropiogenathus, a fighter jet like Dino and the fastest flyer in the game. We would obtain a breed pair along with an extremely good saddle blueprint. I decided to try a little experiment with them. When pressing RS down while boosting with the Tropio, it would cause it to do a barrel roll. So I decided to see what happens if I grappled onto it during this, then let go mid-roll. Thus, the most efficient transport method in the game was found. I got sent across the map in a matter of seconds. I decided to show it to the tribe. Dan would decide to have it go, and then be forced to face his biggest fear, the ocean. Dan was unaware of the power of this maneuver, so when he let go of his grappling hook, he got sent flying towards the ocean, and would start to panic. He got sent so far out I recall him screaming, "There's fucking Moses," while still flying, and then he hit the world border. When we went off to obtain a Uteranus breed pair from the snow biome, we would find a base of terrifying proportions when placing our trap. GWA, a massive base in the frozen lake cave, and a tribe that would prove to be truly villainous. We didn't know much about them at the time, except they were large and we never heard from them. However, Melangang told us that they were chill, so we didn't think much of it. Although, Melangang and us would lose a bit of our chill at each other. Dan had made a trade deal with Melangang, where they promised us highly mutated Rexes in exchange for the I do not remember Asaurus, a truly remarkable specimen. When we received the Rexes, it appeared we had been scammed. The Rexes were not highly mutated. Dan would confront them about this, and they would brush it aside. Me, Nuke and Silver didn't care so much. However, a few nights later, Dan would receive a message from Pizza Hut, saying,
"You or the tribe mates even think about coming at my tribe, so help me God, my allies and I will make sure you or any of your tribe mates won't be able to make it past week 1. I don't give it a shit about what Rexes you were promised. You got the Rexes, end of story. My guy said mutated Rexes and that's it. Come at us and we'll push your shit back so far that it comes out your ears. Step off."
Such a gentleman. You see, this would cause Dan to respond,
"Dude, what did my tribe say? I haven't been on in 2 days and I'll make sure they are set straight."
Thing is, we didn't say anything. Something was off. No side note, we were still pretty young at the time, so didn't know how to respond to it. One day, we were discussing Tropio breeding pair trade deals in chat with other tribes. This would lead Silver to utter words to the server in an ancient forgotten language. It confused all who read it, including myself. Sextop, which roughly translates to Tropiogenathus breeding pair, my good sir, in English. Jokes aside, Silver didn't type that to be funny. He meant it, which makes it all the more funnier. Due to the large size of our base, I would decide to start constructing a secondary base to store extra equipment in the corner of the map, so in the event we got raided, we would have a backup. As the last words Regals and Nate told us were, "Build more turrets," we took that to heart. You see, on the therapeutic server, there was a plugin that would allow you to pick up Plant X once it was fully grown and place them wherever you like. This combined with the high rates gave us the idea to construct a greenhouse. It started off with 4 crop plots, then 9, then 16, then 25, then 40. I was the main Plant X grower, nearly single-handedly planting all something thousand Plant X that we'd have around the base. The entire main section around the base was surrounded, then surrounded again below that. Then the wall of the cliff would start to be completely covered in it. I was growing Plant X like I had a family of 10 to support by illegally selling it, but instead it was all going to defense. However, since we realized Regals and Nate was nowhere to be found, Dan would message them and ask them where they were, and this is what they had to say. I called out the admins before I left.
Call them out for what?
Favoritism. Wiping the server because I wiped them. Abuse. All of it. We didn't really know what to do with this information at the time, so we just kept on playing. However, this did implant some schizophrenic feelings while we were playing. One night, Icy, who was a member of Melon would ask me if he could borrow one of our Quetzals. I gave him one of my personal ones and told him to keep it. However, this move would prove to be the single biggest mistake I had ever made in the game. The next morning, raid weekend had begun. I was transporting supplies to the secondary base when the message appeared. The Desert Titan has started downloading. I instantly 180'd back to base, and so did Dan. When we got back to base, we noticed it parked just outside Melengang's base, and down the hill from ours was a Titanosaur. We initially thought Melengang was being looted. Then the server went down to turn on PvP. Waiting for the server to come back up was one of the most tense moments we had ever experienced. When it started up again, we got on our tames and waited down the hill for someone to make the first move. Then we were sniped off our tames, and the Titanosaur started approaching our base, and then so did the Desert Titan, and then Ark crashed. But not just for me, and not just once, but for everybody present at Reach. We had such a large amount of Plant X and Velonas that it caused extreme amounts of lag on the server. Everybody kept crashing over and over until enough Plant X and Velonas were killed to restabilize the server. However, when I loaded back in, I noticed something. There was no Desert Titan. According to Dan, who was not crashed when I was, the Desert Titan flew towards our base and died near instantaneously to our heavy turret tower. But this would soak all the heavy bullets. When Dan had crashed, I had managed to log back in to watch the Titanosaur have a go at destroying our defenses. And as you can see, it went from being perfectly fine to bloody in a matter of seconds. However, this wasn't stopping the push. Dan asked Melengang for assistance, and they agreed to help us. When things finally stabilized, we could see what was left of their offensive, and what was left of our defense. We didn't have much left, but they still had much to attack with. I spied the last of the tribe's creatures to see who was raiding us. It was GWA, but there was another tribe there, Melengang. And they weren't exactly fighting each other. I told Dan, I think Melengang is betraying us. Dan denied me. As the battle continued, I proposed it again. I was denied again. I said it one more time, and was once again denied. Slowly but surely, they pushed up, and the remaining defense of the base would fall. The large amount of creatures we had out that were still alive were scattered across the desert. At least we still had the secondary base. I respawned there, and Dan asked Icy to bring him to the base, telling him the coordinates. Not long after Dan told him the coordinates, tentacles would appear underneath the glass flooring of the ocean platform. And then, the next second, there wouldn't be a platform. It was official after that. Melengang had betrayed us. The battle went from being heavy losses on both sides to heavy losses on one side and a complete loss on the other. We got into our Xbox party with them and asked them why they attacked us. We got no clear answer, and Dan got angry and went off with them, then left. I thanked them for the raid, telling them that it was really fun, because it was. I had finally got to see how my hard work had fared against an attack, and I was proud to see it. We spoke for a bit, then left. Although it was fun, I wanted to take vengeance for my new Spino I had just lost. But Dan wanted more than vengeance. He wanted them wiped off the cluster. A few hours after the fall of Reach, we would go back to scavenge what we could, and would find way off down the hill near the river one remaining Velonosaur, who we named the Last Noble. This Velonosaur was all we had left. It was mutated too, so we had to find a place to relocate too fast to keep it safe. We decided that staying on Ragnarok would be a bad idea because of the risk of GWA finding us. And around this time, GWA and Melengang merged their tribes too. We made the decision to go to Valguero and spent hours looking for a spot. I found a castle on the east side of the map, so we quickly made a door and covered up one of the rooms, threw out the Last Noble in turret mode, and changed our tribe name to Soviet Union in case someone would find the base and decide to tell GWA Noble Team was built there. After all this, we went to bed for the night, hoping we wouldn't be found.
You are not getting
Quetzal.
back. Get out of my way. I have to scam more people. Thank you.
The next day, we woke up to see our metal door intact and the lost noble alive. So we started renovations. We patched up all the holes in the castle walls of metal walls, built a greenhouse, walled off the entrances, and gave the lost noble a harem of female Velonosaurs to get busy with. However, while checking the castle for structural damage, we would find an underground tunnel that would lead beneath the mountain and made an opening. But this entrance was covered up by the jungle, so we decided to wall it off but not focus too much defense there because it was hidden, instead focusing to put the turrets around the castle itself. After we had finished renovating our property, we knew what we would need to raid GWA because we had been scouting their base on the weekdays when there was no PvP. So we had ridden our shopping list and started to get to work.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody in the car, so come on, let's ride to the liquor store around the corner. The boys say they want some gin and juice, but I really don't wanna be a buzz like I had last week. I must stay deep, cause talk is cheap. I like Angela, Pamela, Sandra, and Rita. And as I continue, you know they're getting sweeter. So what can I do? I really beg you, my lord. To me, flirting is just like a sport. Anything fly, it's all good. Let me jump in, please sing in the trumpet. A little bit of Monica in my life. A little bit of Erica by my side. A little bit of Rita's all I need. A little bit of Tina's what I see. A little bit of Sandra in the sun. A little bit of Mary all night long. A little bit of Jessica, here I am. A little bit of you makes me your man.
We had grinded so hard that by the end of the week, we had everything we needed. Soakers, Gigas, Magmasaurs, percentage-based damage creatures, a new Velona army, Tropios again. We had it all back, and even some extra like Carcanos and Reapers. One frost wyvern we obtained hatched into the most beautiful wyvern I've seen to this day. It was green and black, so we named it Radioactive. During PvE, we would sometimes just leave it on top of the castle. This would cause bypassers to comment on its beauty and chat to us. So this wyvern was quickly becoming a prized possession of ours. One day when I was out and about, obtaining supplies and equipment during PvP, I would notice a base down by the lake at the center of the map. I would approach it and start scouting it out to see if they were a threat. They were a large tribe but didn't seem to have a connection to GWA, so I got back on my wyvern and decided to leave. A mistake that would cost me and the wyvern's life, because I would overestimate the turn radius of it, causing it to fly directly into the base, killing both me and the wyvern. Needless to say, I was not getting my loot back, and I was pretty angry, but I had no one to blame but myself. However, me and Dan found out Nuke had known about this tribe, and had been soaking its turrets with his Reaper, but not to raid it, just for fun. So to avoid any trouble, we told him to stop. Due to our large wealth we had acquired during the past week, we once again decided we would need a second base on the map to store extra items and creatures. But we had already searched for hours the week before, and only found the castle spot, so where would we build? The Aberrant Zone. The most beautiful environment in the game, packed with unique flora, fauna and players, but also covered in darkness, exactly what we would use to our advantage. We would find a flat rock near the top of the Aberrant walls, and there we would build a small base, only roughly 4x4 foundations big. It was easily one of the most hidden spots in the game, and the perfect spot for a stash. We also put a few heavy turrets there on low range for good measure. PvP was on, and it was now the weekend. No one was on Ragnarok, which meant we had an open opportunity for no one to interfere with the raid. We were packed and ready to go. We were going to get our revenge, but then Dan's family had other plans. They would make him go to a baseball game. Which was no big deal, it would only be a couple hours probably, we would just do the raid when he gets back. So he hopped off, and there we waited. Me and Nuke would travel to Ragnarok to do some more scouting on GWA's base while we waited. I would decide to go back to base to get items for a fob to set up, so I transferred back to Val, and would be instantly killed upon spawning in my bed. I informed Nuke, who also then started transferring back to Val. It turned out that the Cold War had turned into a hot one, because we were getting raided by America, Eagle Screech. My bed would be destroyed, so I would have to find the closest spawn zone and run back. At the top of the screen, I noticed that an Arthropura named Puppy was killing some of our creatures. This was bad news, not because of the creatures dying, but because Puppy was one of our own Arthropuras that we had cryoed up, meaning that America, Eagle Screech, had broken into our loot room and taken the majority of our creatures. I would find Puppy by itself in a room, meaning the person who was inside the base had escaped with the loot. I would run to the top of the base to grab a mana. Then I noticed all the turrets were still intact. I looked at the bottom of the base and noticed all those ones were intact too. This meant there was only one way they could have gotten in, the tunnel. I saw radioactive and decided to get it to safety by bringing it to the green obelisk and putting it into storage. I went back to base, got on a man off, and saw one of their gigas down below and would start fighting it. Meanwhile, at the same time, I would be asking why they had raided us in chat. While fighting the giga, I noticed all our creatures had started dying again, but this time to a giga. So I swiftly went back into base, but when I had arrived, the remaining creatures had killed it. America equals Screech, leave. I would start private messaging with their leader, Tim Tom, about the raid. After some discussion, they felt bad for raiding us. Thankfully, the Lost Noble wasn't out during the raid and was in a cryo-fridge, saving it from destruction. I would ask for the Lost Noble to be returned, and they would comply. As discussions continued, we secured a deal where we could trade 20,000 chitin for our creatures back. This seemed like a good deal, so we agreed. Eventually, Tim Tom would just settle for 15,000 due to how long it was taking. He asked how I was collecting the chitin. I told him by killing and chomping the creatures. He explained to me how this was not efficient and it would be much faster if we used a chainsaw. He then proceeded to give me an ascendant chainsaw to keep and test out. It appeared he was right, so I gave him more chitin and eventually this deal would grow into an alliance. They wanted the base spot, so we let them take it. They would start giving us stuff for free, like a Tropio and Giga breed pair. However, when we looked at the Giga, we noticed it was raised by none other than Guy Buttersnaps, who was not a member of America Eagle Screech, but instead the leader of GWA. Tim Tom claimed that they had bought it from GWA, which was pretty fair enough, but we would message Icy and show him what we had quote-unquote found. When we messaged Icy, it would actually cause things to lighten up between our tribes, and they told us we could build on Ragnarok, which we did, in a desert cave in the south. We would once again be getting big, but this time not in a week, but a day with the way Tim Tom's tribe was helping us. We once again had a large amount of Plant X, and this time it would prove to be a good strat. While taming a Megalodon, I realised I had forgot kibble, so I ran back to base to get some, but when I turned the corner into view of the entrance, I would see a flock of wyverns landed outside, and one would see me and start chasing me, trying to pick me up. So I made a dash towards the water, and barely escaped the wyvern's grasp. Once in, I would look to see who the wyverns were. It was US Navy, and no, they didn't have anything to do with America Evil Screech. But the one that was trying to kidnap me was Icy. I messaged my tribe mates that there were people outside our base, and they hopped on just in time. The US Navy had set up fobs all around the base. The boys protected me while I was trying to get back to base to gear up to fight. Once I had made it back, I grabbed my Giga and was going to go back out when I realised they had set up a turret right in front of the door. And behind it, a rock elemental. Nuke charged towards the fob with his Reaper to soak the bullets. The Rock Ellie started fighting him, but then charged out Dan with his Giga, which caused Rock Ellie to turn around and get out of there. I would go to the top of the base and throw out my Giga there. And there just so happened to be a heavy turret there as well. So not being bothered, I just soaked it with the Giga. There weren't many bullets, but then one of the US Navy pilots would start flying towards me with a lightning wyvern, which I can only assume was named F-35B or some other form of Navy aircraft. The wyvern would then try to pick me up off the Giga for the next 5 minutes. The pilot would then get too close to the Giga one of the times, which led to the wyvern's demise. The US Navy was suffering too many casualties to continue, so they retreated back to base. As for us, we had no casualties. I decided to track one of their wyverns to try and figure out their base spot, and it worked. I found it. However, I did get a bit too close and caused one of their turrets to fire, causing someone to exit their base and spot me. So I hastily got out of there before he could see who I was. So then began the waiting game. We didn't want to counterattack instantly because they would most likely be expecting a counterattack, so we decided to wait a bit to take them by surprise. We wouldn't have to wait long because later that night there would be no one on Ragnarok except for us, so we took the opportunity. We began raiding them, but there was one problem. We only had one Soka and Mega Cholon, so we threw it out, backed it up, and it died near instantly for some reason. We had to improvise, so we would do something that would be seen as quite stupid, but would actually work. We soaked with our Rexes. We pumped up their health, put on our finest saddles, and got to work. It would take hours. I was getting impatient, so I thought to myself for some reason, if I could soak one heavy with my Giga, surely it could soak a whole base. So I threw it out, but I threw it out way too close to their base, causing all the turrets to focus on it and kill it instantly. I couldn't complain, that was my fault. Eventually, we would soak all the turrets and approach the base, then be shot by yet another turret. One of them was on players only, so we had to put C4 on a wyvern and fly it into the turrets, destroying it, Allahu Akbar style. We would now have access to the base if it hadn't been for the 4 turrets on the inside. But since they were players only, we just threw a Rex in front of them to cover us and blew up all their shit, not Allahu Akbar style. We now just had to figure out a way to dispose of their last 3 turrets, and the answer would be within the US Navy's own gear, a magma saw. Because the turrets were in a corner, we could just use the splash damage to destroy them. So we tried it, and it worked. We had successfully finished raiding the US Navy, but while Dan and Nuke were transporting the goods back to base, I decided to stay there with the magma saw and foundation work them. Dan would send clips of the raid, which no longer exists because Microsoft's a bunch of pufters, to Icy, who was impressed. Just in case this angered GWA, we decided to change our tribe name to Altera and move to an ocean platform in Genesis, which was Tim Thomas' tribe's home map. And by the way, I ended up perfectly taming the Megalon. We had received a message from Tim Tom that they would like our assistance in a raid, and we agreed. They would tell us where to meet and we would go there. We saw the base and it was terrifying. A little thing here. I was recording this in single player when I was building them, and there's a 100 turret limit, and I couldn't place any more, couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So use your imagination when looking at the towers. Add in fucking Plant X and tech turrets, you know, make it look real scary and shit. Make sure to use a lot of imagination. Turrets and foundations everywhere. Someone asked, what's the turret limit? And their response was, I don't think there is one. Anyways, we got to work. We brought snow owls, Rexes, Rocket Leads which we stole from the US Navy. We would slide down their balloons, but after that, there wasn't much more we could do other than soak. So we got to thinking, maybe we could shoot the towers with a mech siege cannon. We tried it, didn't work. So we ended up using the mech's sword to clear foundations. Then we heard a whistle. Someone had whistled at the turret tower, and all our creatures started moving in. We whistled them to stop, and they all listened, except for one Rex. This Rex had our finest saddle on it, and just kept charging at the tower, despite us whistling it back. It made it to the tower and started biting. It ended up successfully disabling the tower somehow, but would then die because of the other towers shooting it. It was a noble sacrifice. We would decide to try to use cannons, so we started building some, and also the cannonballs to go along with it. But while I was doing this, apparently the tribe members of the Gates of Hell had gotten on, causing everyone to retreat from the raid. We would plan on returning later. While PvP was off during the week, we would decide to go through more of the loot we got from the raid on the US Navy. One item we found was a Tech Rex, cryoed. We threw it out, checked the stats, and then noticed something off with the mutation numbers. It had 211,113,117 patrilineal mutations, and the matrilineal mutations went off screen. We deduced that these were the original Rexes we were promised. Dan saw this as an opportunity to expose GWA and get them cancelled or some shit. He went to the Therapeutic Arc server and posted a screenshot of the mutations with a text under it saying, GWA has this. Of course, I was private messaged by an individual named Brad to see the stats, which I sent, revealing that they were not gods, but rather just above average. Over on Dan's side, he was private messaged by someone named Vibrid. Through the conversation between the two, I learned apparently GWA told Dan they had obtained them through an admin raid, and Vibrid was a part of the admin's tribe. GWA saw the messages and were obviously very angry. They claimed it was a glitch, which I honestly think that it probably is, because the stats don't match up. Some wanted Dan banned from the chat. One achievement I managed to do was completing Bug Rally on Alpha while based at Altera, which took many days of practice. The night before PvP was turned back on, Timton's tribe decided to transfer in the majority of their creatures to Valguero in preparation for another attempt at raiding the Gates of Hell. This time, they were going to make it in, but unfortunately, this plan completely backfired on Timton's tribe. There was a rollback on the server, but only on Valguero. This caused all of the creatures they transferred in to be lost, with no sight of compensation for it. On top of this, when PvP was turned back on, one of their bases was raided, basically killing off all they had left. Due to the chain of unfortunate circumstances, they had an off arc for a while. They gave us all they had left, and then we parted ways. PvP turned on for the week. I was on by myself when I noticed a battle quits and other creatures swimming through the ocean towards our base. I swam back to base as fast as I could. I tried to get the others online, but they wouldn't respond. Panicking, I decided the best thing to do instead of trying to defend against the oncoming storm was to throw as many things as possible into our tech transmitter to save them. And I managed to get a lot in there before they arrived. Things started to die to the quets that I didn't manage to save. Not really being able to do much, I just decided to message IC an inquiry on why we were being raided this time. Specifically, I said, "Let me guess, this is Dan's fault." IC replied,
Indeed.
"For the Rex thing?"
Yes.
Fair enough then. They had managed to locate the base fairly quickly due to the screenshots of the Rex being taken at the base. "Turn off the generator, let us get everything we want, and we'll leave." It was a better option than losing even more than we already had, so I complied. Someone had messaged me during the raid, asking who used the illegal quets to raid the base. I never got a good view of the quets, so I was unsure to whether it was illegal or not, but I had nothing to lose from it, so I just told them it was GWA. I told IC that I'm probably gonna solo tribe at this point, because of the bad luck that had been brought upon me with this tribe. IC told me that they really didn't care about me, they were after Dan. Dan hopped on and I informed him of the news, and he said that he's done with Ark, and that Nuke would follow in his footsteps. So either way, I was solo basing. They let me build up on Ragnarok, and I still had a lot in transfer from when I was evacuating the Altera base, so I could have definitely relaxed on the server for some time. But the thing is, after playing for so long, and all my tribe members leaving, I was bored, so I didn't last longer than a day before quitting. Additionally, this is how the last noble finally got put to rest, by being left in transfer and expiring. Eventually, a couple months later, we returned to Therapeutic. Things had calmed down between GWA and Dan, because apparently GWA quit. According to Dan, they had been raided, which was true because we went to the location of their base, it was raided. Additionally, word on the street was that Weagles was actually playing, and was on Genesis in Luna. Not only that, but apparently he was the one that raided GWA, ending their reign of terror. However, there are no primary sources on whether this is true or not, only hearsay. Anyway, we started building back up. We were doing good and didn't have anything to worry about, because GWA was gone. One day, me and Nuke decided to head to Aberration. While there, we decided to go to one of the entrances to the surface, but when we got there, we saw a massive wall blocking it. It was GWA. So since they had apparently quit, we just headed on in. There wasn't any loot in the base, but there were Managamas and Megachelons throughout the base. We decided to kill them for their saddles. I had told Nuke to do it in such a way that it wouldn't show the tribe name, just in case they were still playing. Nuke obliged, except for one Managama who decided to kill himself. Eventually, we would finish up killing all the creatures and go home. It would turn out that I was right. GWA wasn't happy that we had hit their Aberration base, and when mentioning it, they only mentioned that Nuke raided it, showing that my strategy would have worked in covering up our tracks. When we hopped on, our base had been completely wiped, and then built into by GWA, with turrets everywhere. But the reason for the high protection was because inside their base, they had taken Dan hostage, so since we had nothing, we had to tame a trike and use a primitive saddle to try and get in. Dan would start punching and running around his cage to drain his stamina to try and starve himself out, so it was a race to see if we could break him out before he just killed himself. Dan won the race and starved himself and escaped. By now, the server was getting close to wiping, so we decided to just stop playing and left for some time, until Genesis 2 was released. Since the server was wiping, we decided to make peace with GWA, and they would make peace with us. The one thing we asked, however, was what was the original reason behind the first raid that started this whole ordeal. And to this day, we still don't know. There are 3 answers we were given. The mutated Rex scandal, a Uteranus trap that was apparently a fob to GWA's base, and the third was that we destroyed an oil pump of melon gangs and put our own there, which by the way was left open for public use. Genesis 2 had released, and we were back on Therapeutic. We found a rat hole early, and then another larger one shortly after. On top of that, we also found a way to exploit the Striders. Due to the server having a plugin that would allow structures to be picked up at any time, the transmitter on the tech Strider's back would be recognized as a tech transmitter and would be able to be picked up. Not just once though, infinitely. So we exploited this to the max and filled vaults of resources due to this. While I do see it now as a bit of an arsehole move, I would do it again any day. We had completed building our defense for the rat hole, which is the first time we fully completed a base's defense, although we did have a bit of help in the form of an exploit to get there. So since we finished, it was time to enact our new game plan. No more being nice to people, because clearly that never worked out before. So now, we would start raiding everyone. I had started a Spino breedline due to the base location making Spinos much more favourable than Rexes, but we still had a Rex breed pair for boss fights. While getting silica pearls in the river, I would be jumped by another tribe on their Spino. Sanuk, who had obtained a beautiful R-Reaper, which looked like it had crawled out of a volcano, swung back at it, giving me time to go back to base and grab my own Spino, but when I had returned, they had completely disappeared without a trace. I had gone to Aberration to obtain Rockdrake eggs, and I brought one of my manners with me. I had gotten off it for 1 second and it had jumped away. I had found it above the Element River, clinging to the side of a cliff. I tried to whistle it to me, but it was too far away, so I tried to grapple to it, but the grappling hooks weren't working, so I had to jump off towards the Element River to try and whistle it to safety. I did my leap of fate, and it wasn't listening to my direction whistles, so I whistled it to follow me, which worked, but he got too excited and ran towards me and fell down towards the Element River, towards the light, which he would disappear into, and he would quite literally disappear into it because there was no trace of the manor. It didn't die, its name was nowhere to be seen, it was just completely gone. It ceased to exist, there was nothing in the tribe log. I never figured out what happened to that manor. We had raided so many bases that we were struggling to find more, but that wasn't the only reason behind the struggle. Server population had plummeted hard. There was only a fraction of the people playing that there had used to be. Eventually, we would finally stumble upon a large base in the corner of the map, which pleased me a lot because I wanted to take my new R-Giga for a test spin. Sadly, however, the raid would never happen, and for the saddest reason possible. Therapeutic had reached its end. The server owner announced on the 26th of October 2021 that the server would be shutting down. They no longer had the willpower to continue the cluster, and they were very sorry that they had to do this. The Discord would stay up, and they may rise again when Arc 2 releases. This marked the end of ours and many others' long journeys on Therapeutic. So we would try returning to official one last time, and we were doing really good. We built up fast on the island, we had turrets being set up, and we were getting ready to tame a high level Rex. But then, from all the things that could strike us down, there was the game itself. Time after time, we would get caught off guard by a glitch, and then killed without the opportunity to retrieve whatever valuables we had at the time. In other words, the fucking anti-meshing system. So because the glitches were frustrating us so much, we ended up just deciding to fucking quit and once again take a break from Ark. At least up until the release of Lost Island. And ladies and gentlemen, this is where our story ends. At least the main one. We had adventures in other clusters, such as Ancient Ark and Adults of Jobs, but those are stories for another time. So happy birthday, Merry Christmas, all that shit. The video is done, hope it wasn't too much like a summoning soul video. God bless you and good night.